All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started. As I just mentioned to Leanne, and now I'm not sure who's joining us right now, but I'm going to record this as there's not a lot of people on tonight, and maybe just lots of things going on. Routines have started up for many people, so that means like church gatherings and exercise programs, school functions, sports. They're all starting up again. So, with that being said, our nights get pretty busy and pretty full. And so, the number one thing that I ever hear people say as a reason that they don't exercise is they don't have the time. The number two one that I hear all the time is I don't have the energy. And so we'll talk a little bit about that tonight. But, we are going to talk about exercise. I think if you went and talked to anybody on the street and asked them if exercise was part of being a healthy person, if people, you were just asking people what kind of things you could do for your health, I think most people would come up with exercise being one of them. And so I don't think it's a shock to anyone to think that or to hear that exercise is an important thing for all of us to do. And yet it's a thing that very few people actually do on a regular basis. We all know we're supposed to do it, but we have a hard time doing it. And again, I think some of it's because many people say they don't have the time. And I think probably the bigger issue is that a lot of people just don't have the energy, which is kind of an interesting thing because it's kind of a paradox is that when you exercise, though, it energizes you. So exercise actually gives you energy, but yet it's hard to get that energy to get started. So I think the hardest part about working out for most people is not the actual being at the gym and working out, it's getting themselves to go to the gym in the first place. And so we're going to talk about how exercise is healthy, but we're going to very specifically talk about it in regards to Alzheimer's disease because um, just looking at exercise for all of us is an important thing to do. But if we're looking at, hey, I've got risk factors or I am going down that path of potential dementia, but especially looking at Alzheimer's, we're going to look at how exercise could impact that. Could exercise slow it down, stop it, reverse it? We'll talk about that as well tonight. So, really, the big things we're going to be talking about then is we're going to be talking about exercise somewhat in general, but more specifically, how does it impact somebody that's dealing with Alzheimer's or wants to prevent Alzheimer's or is showing early signs of Alzheimer's? So, we'll talk about why it's important. We'll tell you about some of the best types of exercise that have been proven through different research that help with Alzheimer's disease. And we'll talk about some of the things that you can be doing to help yourself, giving you a few little tips to make sure that you can actually find that time and energy to exercise. And we'll wrap it up, hopefully, maybe a little bit early tonight, just because there's not a ton to talk about. So, anyways, I think again, we all know that we should be moving our bodies, that we should be exercising, but is there something that we can specifically do to exercise and help our brain to function better? And so when we look at different types of exercise, I think what we have to understand first and foremost is that when I'm talking exercise, I think the first thing, especially if you're from the United States or a developed country, when you think of exercise, you think of going to a gym, standing on a treadmill or running on a treadmill, I should say, or getting on a stair climbing machine or something like that. And then not really going anywhere, but putting in a lot of work, a lot of effort, and a lot of sweating. And so that's what we tend to think about when we think of exercise. So really what I'm going to talk about tonight then is I kind of want to switch that thinking and let's just talk about moving our bodies because that's a really important thing to do. But when we think about it that way, we might not think of that exercise, just going to the gym, being on a treadmill. And the reason why I want that, why I want to bring that up, and why it's so important to think of it more as movement than exercise is this book called The Blue Zones. So Dan Buettner wrote this book. He was actually commissioned by Natural Geographic to go around the world and find people that were living to be 100 years old, but also thriving at 100 years old, meaning that their bodies were working the way they're supposed to, their brains are working the way they're supposed to, and still doing that at 100 years old. And so he called them centenarians, or people 100 years old and thriving. And so read this book quite a few years ago. One of the stories I'll never forget in the book was he was talking about going for a bike ride. This guy was going to go ride his bike and go visit his mom. And so he's talking about them getting on their bikes together, and he's having a really hard time keeping up to this guy. They ride up to his mom's place. His mom's out gardening and working outside. And it turns out, as I'm reading this story, I'm thinking, oh, maybe this guy's in his 40s. Maybe, I'm not sure. Maybe he's even younger than that. But it turned out that the guy he was riding his bike with was 75 years old, and they were riding up to go see his mom, who's 100 years old, and she's out working in her garden. And so when you look at the blue zones, when you read it, you'll see that he talks about 4 areas in the world where there was people living to be 100 years old and thriving at that age. And so of those 4, there was 3 of them that were third world countries, that we would consider third world countries. And what's unique about that is if you think about what they were doing as far as for their exercise, is I doubt that any of them had lifetime memberships. I doubt they were going to a gym and running on a treadmill in place. And you look at what their lifestyle was in the book, it talks about they were very active because they were sheep herders. They were very active because they're growing their own food. They were very active because their jobs required them to be moving their bodies. So what we see, unfortunately, in more developed countries is most of our time, most of our work nowadays is not doing physical work. Most of our days are sitting in front of a computer or sitting for our jobs and not being near as active as our ancestors were because of these different jobs that we have. And so the problem with that is, for if you look at the blue zones, those people, their day was actually their workout. They're like I said, they're growing their own food. They're herding sheep, and so the nice thing about or the benefit they would get out of that is they would get their exercise all day long. Whereas if you're sitting at a computer all day long, you are not getting exercise. So you do need to exercise outside of your work. And so again, I think that's why a lot of people find that they don't have the time, they don't have the energy. And the reason they don't have the energy is when you sit all day long, if you've ever sat and watched TV all day long, you would think, hey, I've just sat and conserved energy all day long. And yet by the end of the day, you're more tired than when you woke up. And yet you didn't do anything all day long as far as physical exertion. And so what we're going to talk about tonight is that when we move our bodies, we actually, that's like the battery charger to our brain. It actually gets our brain, gets blood flow into it, it fires nerves, fires into a part of the brain called the cerebellum, which allows our brain to actually work better, allows us to have more energy, and can allow us to feel like energy to go work out. So the blue zones was a great example of people living to be 100 years old, thriving physically and mentally, and not having to go to a gym. But again, if you're like most of us, where we have to find ways to exercise outside of our work, we're going to talk about some of the ways that you can be most efficient to help your brain work as best as it possibly can. So there's lots of different types of Alzheimer's. We've talked about that in some of the other seminars that we did. But if you look at Dr. Bredesen's book, where he talks about ending Alzheimer's, he really separates Alzheimer's into 6 different types. And so there's a type where you have inflammation. There's a type where you're exposed to toxins, or you don't have enough hormones, or maybe injuries caused it, or maybe cardiovascular, you're not getting enough blood flow into that part of the brain that allows you to develop memories, and it's causing damage to that part of the brain called the hippocampus. But there's one that was very much related to blood sugar. And so he actually calls it type 1.5 Alzheimer's. And so maybe you've even heard of people talk about type 1.5 diabetes. But when you look at the different types of Alzheimer's, and you look at which one would probably be the most impacted by exercise, I would say it would probably be the one where your blood sugar is off. And really what's happening in that type of Alzheimer's is that the person's body is becoming insulin resistant. And we know that we need to have insulin to drive sugar into your cells. And if you don't have that insulin driving the sugar into your cells, you can't get that sugar into your cells and you can't get that fuel. Well, just imagine if that's happening up in your brain. You're trying to get fuel for your brain. You can't get that fuel into the brain because of your insulin resistance. And so when you look at exercise, exercise has been shown specifically more like the cardio, high intensity interval training, which we'll talk about in a minute or two. Those type of exercises allow your cells to have more insulin sensitivity, which allows the sugar to get into your cells better. So when you look at the type of Alzheimer's, it's probably the most impacted by exercise. It is that one that's where people have poor blood sugar control. Now, with that being said, though, any one of these that you look at exercise, you will see that exercise will help each and every one of them. Now, one thing that I really cannot stress enough, though, is that when we talk about all these different interventions, from how we should be eating to supplements we could be taking to avoiding toxins, and now we're talking exercise. If you just did exercise alone, I think you'd have very limited results as far as trying to, if you're headed down that path of developing Alzheimer's, or if you're already showing early signs of it, you're going to find that if you just try to do it through exercise, that wouldn't be enough. That you have to look at this as a multi-pronged approach. Just like we talked about in the very first session, where we talked about, it's multiple things that are causing people to develop these brain issues. It's not just one thing. It's not just these neurofibular tangles. It's not just these amyloid plaques. It's causing Alzheimer's. It's all these things, from the toxins to poor nutrition to poor hormone control to infections to inflammation in the body. All those things put together are going to lead someone down that path. So you can't look at exercise alone as the way you're going to get rid of Alzheimer's or get rid of your risk for it. But it is a very big part of it, and it's something we all should do. And just like everything else we've talked about, from reducing toxins and nutrition and such, is by doing those things, you reduce your risk of many other health issues, such as heart health issues, cancers, other infections, helping our bodies to work the best that they possibly can. So when we look at exercising, one of the benefits of it is definitely it helps with blood sugar control, and that's why it can be such a good one when it comes to helping with people that have a blood sugar problem. But I mentioned high intensity interval training. When you look at the research and look at the benefits of exercise regarding Alzheimer's specifically, you will find that high intensity interval training has been the exercise that's been shown to be the most effective at either slowing it down or preventing Alzheimer's disease. And so if you've never heard of high intensity interval training or HIIT training, what it really is working out for a really short period of time at high intensity, and then taking a short break. So a good example of that, and they call this a Tabata, would be that you would exercise really hard for 20 seconds, and then you take 10 seconds off. And maybe you do that for as little as 8 to 12 minutes. You're going to get a really good workout in, and you're going to get that intensity in. And the nice thing about high intensity interval training is it doesn't just end when you're done working out. Is the benefits of high intensity interval training is that they've shown people are still seeing those benefits of exercise even hours later, because of what it does, what kind of all the different things that it starts working in your body, from the metabolic to just circulation to heart rate variability. So it's a really good way to exercise. And a nice thing about it, there's a few benefits that I really like about it, is that it's pretty quick that you can get a workout in. So, like I said, 8 to 12 minutes. Now, I personally, when I do high intensity interval training, I'll go 20 to 30 minutes typically, but very rarely do I ever go past 30 minutes. But if you think about it, 30 minutes in a daytime to do your workout really isn't that much time. And the other benefits that I've seen with high intensity interval training myself, but I'd say that most people would agree with this, is that it can be done anywhere, meaning you don't need a lot of space. Okay. It can be done with no equipment whatsoever. It can be done just with your own body weight. So maybe for 20 seconds, you're doing an air squat where you're just squatting in the air. 10 seconds off. Now you're 20 seconds, you're doing push-ups. 10 seconds off, 20 seconds, you're doing jumping jacks. So what I do is I get a little whiteboard, I write down all the exercises I'm going to do, and then I just work through those exercises and do a 20-second on, 10 seconds off. This past weekend, I had a friend over. We did some kickboxing together. And so we're both really into martial arts. And so we did what we call a 50-second Tabata, where we did 50 seconds on, 10 seconds off. We did that for 12 rounds. When we're doing it together, I'm holding the pads for him, he's hitting, and then we're doing the exercise together, and then I'm holding pads for him. And then we do another 12 rounds where he holds the pads for me. We do an exercise, we do another hitting movement, and then another exercise. And so we did that. And so you look at the time that takes, that took 24 minutes. And then we did a cool down at the end. So in a half an hour, we got a really intense workout. And we did it in my basement. We didn't need anything bigger than a 10 by 10 area. And if you're by yourself, you're looking at a 4 foot by 4 foot area for a lot of these exercises. And so you really don't need much space. You don't need to drive anywhere to go do it. So you save yourself time not having to go to a gym. And like I said, you don't need any equipment to do it. So that's some of the benefits of high intensity training, just from a convenience factor. But then again, from a health factor, you really want to look at what the research shows, that it does help significantly with brain health. I really encourage people when they're doing stuff where they're trying to help with their brain, I would really encourage that you do a lot of balance type of exercises. Balance exercises could be air squats for some people. It could be doing stuff on one hand. It could be doing one leg, one arm. It could be doing stuff like doing core strengthening exercises, which also really stimulates the brain. So doing planks, doing a bridge. Those things will really help with stimulating the brain. So maybe I'm doing an exercise where I'm on one foot and I'm throwing a kick out, doing that multiple times, or I'm doing lunges. Those things are going to really help work on your balance, which helps work your brain, which also helps work in your overall body. So when you're doing high intensity interval training, like I said, I would incorporate balance exercises because it'll even work the brain even more so. Yep, go ahead.
Sorry, quick question. And I don't know if this is getting ahead of anything or not, but one of the questions that I think would be good to address is just whether there's any difference in recommendations for men versus women, just because I know that so many studies historically have been done on males and less on females. So I'm just curious if there's any difference there for what's recommended, especially with women's hormones being more sensitive to stress.
Are you talking about whether high intensity is beneficial, or are you just talking?
Yeah, like, is there a difference between what's recommended for men versus women in terms of high intensity, maybe like duration, stuff like that?
Yeah, no, at least in the studies that are out there, they use female participants and male participants equally. So there was no difference in their results. regarding whether if a woman was doing these exercises, they got the same results that men did. So they didn't, because it's such short bursts. They haven't seen that I've read any difference that a woman needs to do like shorter intensity or anything like that. So, but it is a good question. So,
Okay, thank you.
yeah, absolutely. So the high intensity interval training is just one type of training. Doesn't mean that that's the only way a person needs to work out when it comes to the benefits of exercise for brain health. I would say this that there are different types of exercise, but also I guess different types of activities too. So again, I don't want it to all be about like you're in a gym working out, exercising, because some other things you could do for activities, you could have hobbies that you're doing that you really enjoy. Maybe you're a bird watcher and you're hiking through the woods, or maybe you decided to take up a new sport like pickleball. Pickleball, the nice thing about taking up a new sport is usually one, it helps you stay in shape, but two, there's a learning curve, which is really good for the brain too. So, and then I think it's really important too that you're doing a very big variety of exercises. And so that's why taking up new sports can be really helpful. So the problem that I see is people start really enjoying one sport, like pickleball. I have some patients that, oh yeah, I played pickleball for 3, 4 hours today. The problem with that is it's not that it's bad, but they can develop repetitive injuries. So so when you look at different ways to exercise, again, you don't have to look at being in a gym, being confined to a building or at a treadmill. You can be outdoors, you could be playing a sport, you can be doing other things, like I said, hobbies like bird watching, hiking, geotracking, you name it. There's a lot of different ways to stay active. And then you don't always have to think of exercise as, again, that it has to be something that I've got to focus on, meaning that, okay, in this portion of my day, I'm going to exercise and then not really think about it again the rest of the day. This is how I approach it is I look for ways to exercise in all my day. And so one of those could be where you park your car. So in my family, I don't know if it's really a game or if it's just me getting to make the decision that where we're parking is we're parking in the worst parking spot. And so what I mean by that is we're going to park where nobody else wants to park because that's usually far away from the building. So I've always find it very interesting, very, I guess, humorous to watch people drive around the Lifetime Fitness parking lot looking for a parking spot that's as close to the door as possible so that you could go get on a treadmill and run and go nowhere. And so it just, to me, it seems very, uh, I don't know, it's a no-brainer to me when I get to Lifetime, drive and park the farthest away from the building as you possibly can, start your workout in the parking lot. Or I'm sure we've all heard that taking the stairs versus taking the elevator is the way to go. So we moved our son. He just went out to college for the first time this year. We took him to NDSU. He's tells us he's got a room on the 7th floor. And so we start carrying his stuff in, thinking we're going to go to the elevator because this stuff's not light. And nope, first thing he does is go right up the stairs. So we're following him up the stairs with all these heavy packages and stuff. And so but it was a really good workout because I was like, well, I'm not going to get my workout in today. And I got a great workout in just carrying that stuff up the stairs. So looking for things in your daytime to exercise, I think is really important too, because if you go to the gym, work out super hard for a half an hour, and then you go sit on your couch for the rest of your day, I think that that's not near as important as if I just all day long got up, took breaks, did little walks, and exercised throughout my entire day. I think that's going to be more effective than if you just took a half hour of your day exercise and then didn't do any more exercise after that. So I think it's really important that we don't just put exercise in this little box. I have a certain part of my day where I exercise, and then the rest of the day I'm not exercising, because we can exercise throughout our entire days. Elizabeth, is there any examples of what you do that that where you try to find ways to get more movement into your day?
Well, one of the things that I do, like especially back when I was working at home, a lot was, and this might sound kind of weird, but like even making sure I'm drinking a lot of water so that I am forcefully reminded, like, oh, I need to get up, I need to go to the bathroom, I need to move around. Sometimes doing even just like an extra little lap as I was doing that, because the bathroom obviously isn't super far away, but taking the long way even there. Also trying to fit in a quick walk, whether it's like in the morning before work or doing like a short 10 to 15-minute walk after meals is also super great. There's a lot of studies out there about how that also impacts blood sugar, but also doing the same things that you were talking about, parking far away, just making sure that you're taking the stairs. I do a lot of those similar things.
Yeah, yeah. I love that one about the water because that's a healthy habit right there, right? And
Mm-hmm.
then if you drink enough water, it's going to force you to get up and go to the bathroom, which is enforcing another healthy habit, which is getting up and walking. And as a chiropractor, I tell people all the time, one of the most beneficial ways to exercise is walking. Walking is easy on the joints, a lot easier than running, and it has this fluid motion that's really good for your spine. It pumps the discs in your spine, brings blood flow to areas of the body that need that. So, highly recommend people that they're walking. I think we
Yeah.
get a little caught up in running all the time, and really, excuse me, walking can be just as beneficial, if not more beneficial than running, because it's a lot easier on our bodies. So we
Yeah.
think of,
So
oh, go
sorry,
ahead.
another quick one. Like I know
Yeah.
that some of my friends too will, especially if they have sedentary jobs, they'll put like a little timer or something on their phone, and every time it goes off, like typically once an hour, they're like, okay, I need to do 10 jump squats, or I need to do 20 jumping jacks, or just something to like get the blood flowing again before they go back to work for an hour, and just like having that hourly movement reminder.
Yeah, I love that. And so we can definitely utilize technology too to help us because what you're seeing is you're seeing like these Fitbits and Apple Watches, and you'd mentioned using a computer, or you could use your phone as a way to remind you to exercise. And so I know Apple's got a thing like these 3 rings that you have to try to it's kind of like a game that you're trying to complete these 3 rings each day, and they're tied to different things from how many steps you get to how often you move or you're getting up on a regular basis. We have friends that their insurance company pays them if they accomplish these specific goals each day. So one would be the amount of steps that they do. Another one would be that you're getting up every hour, moving your body, and one is getting a certain amount of steps in a certain period of time. And if they can achieve those, then they get money back from their insurance. So I love that idea because it's got incentive. It's really, insurance companies are finally getting on board with understanding that, hey, if you can promote healthy activities, their insurance dollars will go a lot further, and insurance companies won't be paying out so much in healthcare because their people are staying away from having to go to the doctor or go to the hospital or anything, because they're staying healthy, because they're doing the right things for their bodies. So when we think of exercise, though, I think we tend to think of just the benefits of exercise to our bodies. But again, what this talk tonight is about how does it help our brains, and again, specifically, how could it do that with Alzheimer's? Well, if you've been to if you participated in the seminars we've done already, you can see that a lot of these health issues that are driving dementia and Alzheimer's are very much related to things like inflammation and blood sugar and such. And so exercise reduces inflammation. It helps with blood sugar and insulin sensitivity, so it can help to decrease that. Can really help with getting rid of toxins. When we're sweating, we're getting rid of toxins in our body. It can help with hormone control because it helps your body work better. It also, we tend to think of better blood circulation, but what it does is it fires the nerves in our brain. And our brain is just like any other part of your body. If you're not using it, you start to lose it. And so when you're moving your body, you're firing into a part of the brain, back part of the brain called the cerebellum. The cerebellum then fires into the cerebral cortex. The cerebral cortex then fires down into the midbrain, back into the cerebellum. And you get this circuit going. And what it does is it gets those neurons firing and keeps those neurons healthy. So really important to think about that it does help with just not just with our physical health, and definitely not just with our hearts, even though it does, but it also helps with our brain. But when we think of exercising, we also tend to think of moving our body, but we can exercise by doing things for our brain. So you may have heard of these different apps that are out there, or these different programs that help you to exercise your brain. A big one that probably a lot of you have heard of because they advertise on TV is called Lumosity. I've used that. I spent a year using that one, and then I wanted to see what other apps were like. So I did Brain HQ. And so what they have is they have exercises for the different parts of our brain. So we tend to think of our brain just as this one thing, like, oh, it's my brain. But the brain is made up of many different parts, just like your body's made up of many different parts. And so each part of our brain does something different. So when you're exercising the brain, you want to think about that. I don't just want to exercise this one part of my brain. I want to exercise the whole thing. So I may do things for visual activities. So I might do an exercise where I'm having to look around a lot, or pick little things up by looking. But then there might be an exercise that I need to do some math, and there's some exercises that I need to remember things. That's allowing you to work different parts of the brain. Well, Lumosity and Brain HQ both do that. There, like I said, there's other ones out there as well. I've never used any other ones, but I'm sure that they're good. But the exercises are working the whole brain. So if you remember I remember this, my grandpa was always doing crossword puzzles. And he would tell us, oh, this is good for my brain. It helps me to remember things. And it is definitely true. The problem is you wouldn't want to just do crossword puzzles to help with your brain. You'd want to do crossword puzzles plus other things as well. And so working our different parts of the brain help our brain to function better. But recently there was an article, or maybe even considered a study, that said that they did look at these apps and these different programs, and they looked to see, do they really help with cognitive decline, or are they really just a useless tool? And their article concluded, based off of looking at different studies, that it actually was useless. They said that doing these exercises for your brain did not help with cognitive decline. And this is what I would say. And I feel like the study was somewhat flawed, because when you look at studies, you try to eliminate variables. So you're really just looking at one variable, and they're saying, well, doing these exercises for your brain didn't make a difference. But again, like we talked about earlier, is that you can't just take one approach. So if you don't change nutrition and you start doing these brain exercises, you are not going to see a big change. But if you look at adding nutrition and doing these exercises together, they're synergistic, and you will get greater benefits than if you just did them alone. So it's really important to look at doing them together. And the makers of these apps did come back, and they did do some studies where they looked at that whole holistic approach, not just looking at the exercises, and they did show that it does have benefits when you are doing all the other things, from exercise to eating right, to taking the right supplements. So
Yeah,
I would
and
oh, go ahead.
I'm just going to add to that. So one of the ways that can also work synergistically is, and this is an example from a patient that we have actually, like when you have this data that you're getting from playing these games, like you can see how you're improving, and seeing that improvement is very motivating to keep going. So this patient has seen with the diet and supplements and the changes that she's making, and by doing Lumosity 4 times a week, that she's started to see drastic improvements in her scores. And she is very excited that she is now able to remember things that she couldn't before. And that's just motivating her more and more to do even more good things for her brain health. So
That's
just,
really
yeah,
cool.
another example.
Yeah, so technology can be a great thing. Now, that being said, technology can also be a bad thing. I would say, especially as when we're trying to remember things. And so I know I catch myself. I don't know if you've been frustrated when you can't remember something. I know I have been. And so then you sit there and you think about things, and then eventually, a lot of times, what you're trying to remember will pop into your brain. But because we have these devices in our pocket that we can just look things up really quickly, a lot of times, what I do, anyways, well, I don't even need to think. I'll just, Google will tell me where the answer to basically everything I need to know. So if I can't remember that movie, what was the name of that movie? Oh, I'll just Google it. Or who sang that song? Oh, I'll just Google it. Or who was something in history, and I'll just Google it. And now I'm not using my brain like I should be. And so I think that these devices can be kind of a crutch for us. And so I would highly recommend that not be quick to jump to those type of things. The other thing I'd recommend, the technology is great. Lumosity has great game on it, where you're looking at a screen like you're out in nature, and then they'll flash a whole bunch of things will pop up, and you're supposed to find where the bird is, and then click on where the bird was in those different visual fields. And so pretty cool and everything, but the problem with it is that it's just two-dimensional. And the other thing is you're sitting staring at a screen still. So what I would definitely recommend is that you can actually go out and bird watch. I mentioned that that can be a hobby. The nice benefit about being out actually bird watching is that I'm walking, I'm getting out in nature, I'm getting fresh air, I'm being out in God's creation, and that is very healthy for our bodies. And so, learning to play an instrument is another way to strengthen our brain. So you think about, again, I could play a game on Lumosity, or I could actually just go and learn how to play guitar, learn how to play the piano. I know that a lot of us, with raising kids and such, it's we didn't have time to do it. Maybe we wanted to do it when we were younger and we didn't really have the focus, and now you want to. Highly encourage you to try it. It is harder as we get older, but that's okay, because what you're trying to do is you're trying to do something hard so that your brain has to work, so you can make that brain stronger and make it work better. So another one would be learning a new language. Again, you look at learning a language as a little kid versus learning a language now. It's way harder now, but again, that's the whole point. We're trying to do things that are hard because they'll help us to have a stronger brain. And so learning to do speak another language, and there's lots of really cool, again, what technology can do to help you with. So I would definitely say that doing those things can be helpful. Bird watching, crossword puzzles are still definitely a really good thing to do. Sudoku puzzles. There's lots of different brain exercises that people can do that help with their overall brain. Again, you want to always think about that your brain does a lot of things, so strengthening the brain in a lot of different ways. So playing memory games, that kind of thing, is just one way to do it. But doing visual stuff, doing things that fire your cerebellum, which would be moving your body, doing things that work your language center, math center. A lot of us don't need to do a lot of math anymore. Again, you can just use a calculator, but highly encourage you to do those type of things for the brain. So these are the things that we can do. One of the things that I think is really, I mentioned walking already, but I think adding in walking with people, or we have a couple of dogs now, taking them for a walk, but really encourage people to be walking with others. My wife and I, it's really helped our marriage to be out walking together. we used to just walk all summer, spring, and fall. And then when winter hits, like, yeah, we're not going out there. It's too cold. But we decided one year for Christmas that we would get ourselves some warmer clothes so that we could be out in the cold, and it would be wouldn't be unenjoyable. That we could actually still enjoy being outside and walking together. So we've done that for the last few years. So we'll walk. It could be minus 20 degrees outside. We're out there walking together. And really, like I said, it's not just good for our bodies, it's good for our brains, and it's good for our relationships, which I think is another part of the brain that needs to be exercised on a regular basis. And like I said, it's not near as hard on the body as if you're running and doing more like pounding type of exercise. Another thing that we can do that is really easier on the joints, and I think it's interesting that as we get older, we really want to switch the type of exercise we're doing. I'm big into martial arts, but it's hitting pads and stuff. It's pretty high impact, and I'll feel it. I'll feel it the next day. My knees might be a bit sore, and so what you see, and you definitely see this in other cultures, is that they start shifting to more less impact type of workout. So in the Asian community, you'll see more martial arts, but then it shifts to like Tai Chi, although you can do Tai Chi if you're younger. But a lot of us when we're younger don't want to do something like that. We want more of that high impact. But as we get older, it's harder on our joints to do that kind of stuff. And so, like Tai Chi exercises, yoga, Pilates, those are all things that a person can be doing to help keep moving the body, but they're not near as stressful on our body. So, and then I love this picture because you're out in nature doing it. I think the only thing that I'd love to see them do different is take their shoes off too and actually connect to the earth because there's benefits, actual physical benefits to connecting to the ground, and that's transfer of electrons. So it can be really helpful for us to exercise actually barefoot. And I think that that's one of the big reasons why we love walking on beaches. One, you get the sound of water, which is beneficial, but then there's also a passing, significant passing of electrons from that sand into our bodies. And so moving our bodies doesn't always have to be high impact either. The other thing about this is you're getting balance at the same time, and you're also getting just firing into that cerebellum because of these nice fluid movements that maybe our bodies, we're not used to taking our bodies through. And so Tai Chi, yoga, Pilates, Elizabeth, anyone, other ones that you can think of that are kind of that lower impact?
Not off the top of my head.
Yeah.
If I think of a low impact one, I'll put it in the chat, but I think
Sure.
hit on the big ones.
Yeah, and honestly, dancing I
Oh,
think is a big one. What's
that's
that?
what I was just gonna add. Yep.
Yeah. And so that's kind of a lost art. I'm not sure, Leanne, if you and Jim go out and go do dancing, but you talk to a lot of people back that are our parents and grandparents, and you'll hear that they would go out dancing on Friday nights, Saturday nights. They'd go square dancing to ballroom dancing to swing dancing, you name it. And so I think that that's kind of a lost art as well from what we see today in our society. And so lots of ways that we can be moving our bodies though and helping with our brains. My wife and I, we bought kayaks a few years ago. Pretty low impact, pretty easy on the body. Much different type of workout than you're normally doing. And again, you're out in God's creation, so you're just enjoying being on the water. You're enjoying seeing animals. You're enjoying seeing other people doing the same thing. So paddleboard is another one which really works your core. Riding a bicycle, all these things can be really helpful for our bodies. So again, as we look at it in regards to Alzheimer's specifically, we would never tell people that if you just exercise, you're never going to get Alzheimer's. You're not going to develop these cognitive decline. That's just not true. It can definitely slow things down. It can definitely help your body to work better and to function the way it's supposed to. But I wouldn't take that approach only. I would look at, hey, I'm taking multiple approaches to this because it does require from the nutrition, from avoiding toxins to having good blood sugar control. So it's really important that we don't look at it like it's the only thing, but it needs to be part of it, of all these things that we're putting together that help us to stay healthy. And so when we look at Alzheimer's and we look at what most people have been told, is they've been told, well, there's nothing you can do about it. It's a progressive disease. It's going to happen whether you want it to or not, and it's going to keep getting worse. And we hear very few people ever reversing it or being cured of Alzheimer's disease. And yet, with the work that Dr. Dale Bredesen is doing, the studies that are coming out of his work, and all the practitioners that are doing what he does, you are seeing more and more of those statements being, those myths being busted, I guess. And so what you're seeing is that it can be slowed down, it can be reversed, and it can be stopped in some people's cases. But regardless of that, exercise is just a really important thing to do. So whether you're doing it because you want to slow it down, reverse it, or stop it, or you're just wanting to just stay healthy in the first place, then I would highly recommend that you be moving your bodies. And again, as we talked about today, you can see that it's not always, in a gym, in a treadmill, staring at a mirror, being bored out of your mind. That exercise can be really fun. It's something that we all need to be doing. Our bodies were designed to be moving. And so um, what I would highly recommend is that you find things that you enjoy doing, and then find people that you enjoy doing them with, and then as you do those things, you're going to be way more successful than if you just try to, bear through getting to the gym and hating what you're doing. So my neighbor yesterday asked, or 2 days ago, I guess it was, asked me if I wanted to do a half Ironman with them next summer. And I love to exercise. I love to run. I love to ride bicycle, and I absolutely, absolutely hate to swim. So I was just like, I don't know why I would do that. I don't know why I would put myself through that when that kind of training that I have to do when I don't like swimming at all, when I know there's so many other types of exercise that I do like to do. So I don't think I'm going to be doing a half Ironman, but I do want to find other things that I love to do, and as I do them, love being healthy because of it. Love how I feel, and I'd highly encourage that if you're not exercising, to start. If you're already exercising, hopefully this was helpful to learn some different ways that you can do it. And just to address the time aspect of it again, it doesn't have to be a really long workout. And the more you can think about things throughout the day that you can incorporate into your day that are exercise, the less time you have to spend at a gym, or the less time you have to spend just focusing on your exercise. So, well, this has been hopefully helpful for you guys, and hopefully this series, as we go through it, is helping you to see that there's a lot of things that you can do to help yourself to have better health, to potentially prevent Alzheimer's disease, or at least slow it down, reverse it. So hopefully you can see that that is possible. One thing that we're really encouraging people to do is we want you to do as much as you can on your own, but there's definitely things that as we go through, that can be hard for you to do, maybe hard to, like, habits to develop, or they might be hard to just understand. And that's why we're here. We want to be a resource for that. So as a doctor, I want to be able to help people to understand what they can be doing for testing and how do they know which type of Alzheimer's and are they headed down that path. And then as Elizabeth, as a health coach, what she wants to do is come alongside those people it's just hard for them to incorporate these lifestyle changes. And she's really good at helping people to be successful when they have a program. She works with a lot of patients that are given some pretty I guess, difficult tasks to do. And when she's working alongside them, it is a lot easier for those people to be successful. So, any questions at all from anybody?
You answered all of the ones that I had today, and I had also put it out there in the chat that if there were any questions, to feel free to interrupt or send them, and I haven't seen anything come through there. So unless there's, Leanne, anything you wanted to have covered?
No, just, thank you. Sorry, we were non-responsive. We were finishing supper and everything.
Not a problem. See, that's what we like about these Zoom calls. You can multitask, and it does save people time so that they don't have to drive to the office and hear the talk. I know Elizabeth, she had mentioned that she's going to be cooking her supper, I think, at the same time. So totally have no problem with that whatsoever. I'm glad that people are able to do that and still be able to enjoy it. Like I said,
saves you time so that you can do your workout.
Yes, exactly. Yep. So you can more time to do things you love to do, and one of them hopefully will be to move your body and to exercise. So we did record this again tonight. So as you watch this, hopefully again it's helpful. If you guys ever need help whatsoever, our office, Vallejo Health and Wellness Center, is that is our passion, to help people to experience life to the fullest, to have their bodies function the way they're supposed to. And if they're not, our job is to help figure out why it's not functioning the best it possibly can. So, so again, thank you for joining us tonight, and hopefully you have a great rest of your night. God bless.
Thank you.
Thank you.